In this episode, we're going to do some trade talk with some sell high, buy low targets ahead of game week 17, as well as all the usual stuff before the last normally spaced game week before the festive fixture pile-up. Welcome back to the Draft FC podcast, the podcast website and YouTube channel dedicated to all things official Draft FPL. My name is Mitch, and I'm your host for another Game Week preview, going over waiver options, hidden gems, and general Premier League chat ahead of Game Week 17. Now, all of Game Week 17's fixtures will be played across the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. No Friday night football, no Monday night football, because all of Game Week 18 will be coming on the following Thursday, Friday, which is the 26th and 27th, so Boxing Day and a day after. Then there is just a single day gap before we're straight into Game Week 19, which means very little space for planning and for waivers. For draft veterans, you'll be familiar with this. Christmas Day is for one thing, means one thing only for us, and that is a waiver deadline. Now, in this episode, I'm not doing a draft duel again as I continue to fiddle around with the format. Instead, I'm going to have a look at some buy low, sell high targets, as I said in the intro, to possibly help inform some trade negotiations. This tends to be the time lots of trades take place because there are lots of games, lots of game weeks coming thick and fast, and it's really the time when managers are trying to look to turn their seasons around. So hopefully that will provide some value, and we'll cover that towards the end. Now, I'm recording this episode at the slightly earlier time for me on Monday, the 16th of December. So any team news, injury developments, or press conference info are up to date as of then. And of course, subject to change. The main thing that could throw a few spanners in the works are that in midweek, we've got the EFL Cup quarterfinals. So just need to keep an eye on team news and any injuries that might come as a result of those games. Some of the players I'll be discussing in this episode include Iwobi, Ismail Assar, Morgan Gibbs-White, plus a few more. So let's get straight into it. A weekly reminder from me that the Draft FC free trial code is still very much up and running for 1 month free. Good time to do it, as I said in recent weeks, because of the fixture pile up. It means you can get quite a lot squeezed out of your 1 month free trial. Just use the code DFCFree24 and sign up on a standard monthly amount, which will then recur at $3.99 a month. But if you want to try before you buy, put in the code and see what we've got on offer. Let's look at Waiver Watch. All of this data coming at you courtesy of what we've got at Draft FC. So these are looking at the players coming in and out in last week's waivers ahead of Game Week 16. So the players that were coming in, we had Jadon Sancho, Munoz, Enzo, pretty good starting three there. Kiwior, Gibbs-White, Lamptey, Harvey Barnes, Sharda, Souček, and Lacroix. So pretty good set of moves coming in there. Can't really grumble at many of those, if any of them. Bad luck for those of you that brought in Jakub Kiwior, who didn't start, but pretty decent set of moves in there. The players making way, we had Mikel Antonio, which is fair enough. Tavernier also injured. Emerson, Cash, Neto, Wilson, Joao Gomez, Leon Bailey, Romero, and Doku. Overall, a pretty good set of moves all round there. I think good players coming in and the right players generally moving out. In terms of key injuries and suspensions, the theme of this week, and it's really, again, just a sign of the times because we're approaching the halfway mark, lots of suspensions for players hitting that 5 yellow card mark. So Munoz is on there, Joel Linton, Andreas Pereira, Delap for Ipswich, all got 5 yellows now, so we'll miss the next game week. Cucurella got sent off, second yellow after the final whistle, as did Ait-Nouri in exactly the same fashion, which is quite odd. So both will also serve a one-match suspension. I think for Ait-Nouri too, that should have been his 5th yellow, but because he's now been sent off, he kind of resets the clock back onto 4 yellows. So when he comes back, if he gets booked again, I believe he will receive another one-match ban. The last one I've included in that list, and was kind of part of the shenanigans that got Ait-Nouri sent off, is Cunha. He was involved in a bit of an incident, bit of a fracas with one of the Ipswich Town backroom staff. He kind of grabbed at him, pulled his glasses off his face. It was all caught on video, of course. He wasn't punished at the time, but I am 99.9% sure that he will receive some sort of retrospective ban because of that. Now, I wonder if just because of the way that these things can move, which is generally pretty slowly, and whether he's got kind of time to appeal against any decision, whether or not that decision will come right away or whether it may delay a week or two. My suspicion is he'll get probably a 3-match ban for it if they pick him up on it, which, as I said, I'm reasonably certain they will do. Just something to bear in mind if you've got him, or if you're maybe discussing Cunha as part of a trade negotiation, he could have a little holiday over the New Year period. Let's get into some of the main picks. So a couple of defenders, starting with Anthony Robinson for Fulham. Ownership in 10-team leagues is way up at 98%. There's a little bit more availability in 8-team leagues, but he becomes the third defender now to hit 6 goal involvements for the season, alongside Ait-Nouri, and interestingly, Nathan Collins. Yes, Nathan Collins currently sat on 2 goals and 4 assists for the campaign. 2 assists for Robinson in the game against Liverpool, so set up both of Fulham's goals. And then the prime fixture of the year for anyone at the moment on the next game, which is Southampton at home. Southampton could still very much be managerless because of the fact that they have now sacked Russell Martin. But new manager or not, I don't really foresee any kind of new manager bounce for that group of players, and would be keen to get any and all Fulham defenders if they were available. The next one is an interesting one. Now, I said to Draft FC Kieran on the group chat the other day that one of the players who I think could emerge as a winner in the new system under the new manager at Man United is Harry Maguire, because whatever you think of him, he can be a very solid centre-back in the back three. We've seen a lot of rotation already, players being subbed early since Amorim took over, which is mainly because I think he's still just trying to suss everyone out and seeing how the various pieces could fit together. But Maguire is a player I generally like in draft because not only does he have the potential to get a clean sheet, and I think overall United remain not the worst options for a clean sheet week to week, but I like Maguire because of his attacking potential from set pieces at the other end. Now, it's not really something we've seen so far this season, but I think it's only a matter of time before he nuts one in. And yeah, I just really like how he could fit in on the left side of the three. It does mean Lisandro Martinez misses out, but to be honest, Maguire's looked better to me from recent performances, so we'll have to see how that all shakes out. Into midfield, and let's start with Morgan Gibbs-White, who started slightly more advanced in this game before the team was restructured a little bit with injuries, particularly to Yates and then substitutes. But finished the game against Villa with an expected goal involvement above 1 and got an assist to show for it. It now means 3 of his 4 attacking returns this season have come in the last 2 game weeks. Many managers, myself included, would have rightly lost faith in Morgan Gibbs-White weeks ago, as he was averaging less than 2 points per week up to GAMEWEEK 15. It's surprising because if in the summer somebody showed me the current league table with Forest flying high in 4th, I'd have been so keen to pick him up at any cost on draft day, because I would have assumed that Gibbs-White was popping off. The best thing, though, as far as Forest are concerned, is that if he has saved his output for the latter half of the season, then they stand a very strong chance of maintaining their form and getting and locking down a European spot for next year. I've always been a fan. Those of you who've listened to the pod for a while will know I've been a fan of his for a long time. So it's been a frustrating watch when I've been looking at him so far this season. But non-penalty expecting goal involvements per 90 currently sits at 0.45, which is his strongest showing in the Premier League to date. And he's slightly lagging behind his expected output so far, which makes him definitely a buy low waiver investment, with their next 4 league games all against teams I would expect Forest to score against, and a generally favourable run up until GAMEWEEK 25 in February now, if you ignore the blip, which is Liverpool in GAMEWEEK 21. Forest players generally are definitely on the menu. As it goes, amongst the regular players for Forest, Morgan Gibbs-White non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 of 0.45 is actually the highest, with Chris Wood just a slither behind on 0.44. So a player who is actually performing well above the expected output, and someone who may be on my sell high list at the end of the episode. Next is Ismaila Sarr for Palace. Managed to rack up expecting goal involvements of just over 2 in that fixture against Brighton, which is phenomenal for a single fixture, coming away with 2 goals and an assist, so involved in all 3 of Crystal Palace's goals. They look far, far better with Jimenez behind a central striker, so I don't think we'll be seeing much more of the Mateta and Nketiah combo unless they're chasing the game late on. I also don't think it really allows much room for Kamada to get some game time either, because I think he's far better off as backup and coming on as a substitute The concern with Sarr is that we've seen 2 high output games against Brighton, where he got 17 points, and away at Villa in game week 12, where he got 13 points. And other than that, it's been lots of 1 and 2 pointers. So his expected output is also not really correlating very well with his actual output. A home game against Arsenal this coming week isn't the greatest on paper, but they do follow that up with a trip to Bournemouth and then a home game against Southampton before New Year. So a game you definitely want him in your draft team for that one. For those in classic scoring leagues, he's well worth a punt for the next few weeks. But for those of you in head-to-head leagues where you're needing probably a little bit more consistent output from the players that you're looking at, he may be not the best one to go for because he's a little too boom or bust at the moment. Next is Alex Iwobi for Fulham. Ownership has just been in the ascendancy all season long, and ownership now up to 93% in 10-team leagues, which is phenomenal levels for him, who, last couple of years, he's pretty much been waiver fodder. He's been in and out of your teams. His 8 attacking returns is the highest for Fulham so far this season, and he's already surpassed his season tally from last year, and we're not even halfway through. 1 more attacking return from him, and he'll have equalled his best ever season tally, which was 9. He got in an Everton shirt in the 22-23 season, where he got 2 goals and 7 assists. His per 90 underlying numbers are also the strongest he's ever put up in his career so far. You won't get a very good price for him right now because of how good his form has been, but certainly a player I would be considering making some trade inquiries for if the manager who has him would be willing to sell. Equally, if you are listening to this and have Iwobi in your team, it would take a very strong offer to prize him away from me if I owned him in any of my own draft teams. And then finally, another Draft FC favourite, Kevin Schade. Again, 7 attacking returns in his last 4 game weeks. Better still, those 7 returns have come from just over 170 minutes of actual playing time. You all know how much I like him. They went with the back 3 against Chelsea, which is probably the main reason he didn't start. Igor Thiago has potentially picked up some sort of minor injury, so fully expect Schade to start in the next one. The only thing that could get in the way is they do have EFL quarter-final against Newcastle, I believe, in midweek. So if he plays on that one, it could dent his chances of playing at the weekend. But you know how much I like him, and his form at the moment continues to speak for itself. Into some hidden gems, and I've not highlighted too many because I really wanted to highlight just the main gems or potential gems. And the main defender to highlight is Tosin for Chelsea. Badeshile picked up some kind of issue in training, which we're waiting on firm details for, but it's clear Tosin is next in the centre-back pecking order ahead of Disasi. So with Fofana out for a while, if Badeshile remains out for the weekend, then Tosin is well worth a pick-up with a trip to Goodison Park in game week 17, as good a chance as a clean sheet as you will find. Into midfielders, and next is Elliot Anderson, owned in just 1% of 10-team draft leagues. Now, I've already done, one of my several annual Morgan Gibbs White praise segments in this episode, but a player who's potentially become an even better watch for me this season when watching Forest is Elliot Anderson. What a player he is, and a player that has to start every game now when he's fit. He's now on 5 assists for the season, setting up Elanga's winner at the end of the Villa game. I was a little put out, actually, by how much love Elanga was getting for that tap-in when it was all Anderson, that goal. He does just a bit of everything, and he does it really, really well. There are conflicting reports about how much Forest actually paid Newcastle for him in the summer. The lowest reported fee is around 15 million, and higher reports see that going all the way up to 35 million. But even still at that level, he is an absolute bargain. And if they wanted to cash in on him, they could probably make a profit on him in January. I'd love to have him at Spurs. He could really fill a good role as a progressive number 8 in the Postecoglou system. But yeah, really good player to watch. Starting to actually cash in with more and more goal involvements. And the trip to Brentford means Forest will get some chances in game week 17, and I'm pretty confident he will start. And at that ownership, well worth a punt. And speaking of bargains, Jacob Murphy has continues to prove to be a very useful player for Newcastle, has been over recent years. And just continues to tick along with attacking output. 6 attacking returns from just over 700 Premier League minutes so far this year means he's getting a return roughly 1 every 120 minutes of football, which is very solid. Newcastle don't have the easiest fixture run at the moment, especially over the festive calendar, but Murphy is hitting his yearly purple patch and is well worth a pump because if Newcastle play well, he tends to be involved. And then finally, a forward to mention, and that is Al Hamadi for Ipswich, just owned in 1% of 10-team draft leagues. And I had a peek to see if he could be the most hidden gem selection this week, but I'd really forgotten just how big the struggles are for strikers in 16-team leagues, because actually he's rostered in over 70% of 16-team leagues. Even coming on the pitch for a 1-point sub appearance is worth having in leagues of that size. But anyway, Hurst remains injured, and as we said in the slide at the beginning, Delap hit 5 yellow cards, which means he will be earning himself a weekend off. So it means Al Hamadi, who we have been seeing, as I said, coming on as a bit of a sub, will be starting as the number 9 for their upcoming fixture against Newcastle, which is at home. Newcastle will be in good spirits after their emphatic win over Leicester, so they do have that EFL Cup quarter-final against Brentford on Wednesday, which I expect them to take seriously. Joel Linton is also out due to 5 yellows, so Ipswich will fancy themselves get a result in that one. It's difficult to stand behind any stats when it comes to Al Hamadi's goal-scoring pedigree, but he's still only 22, and this will be his first top-flight start. Given some of the goals we've seen scored recently, he's got as good a chance as anybody. And as I said, particularly in the bigger leagues, if he was available and you've been cycling through your third striker spot, why not take a 1-week punt on Al Hamadi? And then the most hidden gem pick this week is Jed Spence for Spurs, owned in just 3% of 16-team leagues. Clean sheet and an assist in their win over Southampton gave him 9 FPL points. It's tricky to analyse players after a game like that one because Southampton were awful in that first half, but what it's shown is that Spence is more than good enough to be an understudy for Porro and also Udogie potentially, and also challenge for a starting spot. He has, as I said, that dual opportunity of also being able to cover on the left, but he was looking far better on the right before Udogie went off injured. It means I'm pretty sure we'll see a bit more of Jed Spence in the coming weeks, so for those in larger leagues, he's well worth a grab for the attacking potential that comes with it, because you're certainly not going to be seeing many more clean sheets out of him. And then, as I said at the beginning, let's take a moment to have a look at some potential players that we could be looking to get in and also move on in some trade negotiations. So I'm going to start with some sell high candidates. So obviously, these are only relevant if you own them. So if you don't, there's not really much to see here. But if you did own any of these are some players that I would be looking to offer around to my league rivals. The first one, as you can see, for those of you watching on screen, the ownership of these players that we're talking about is all above 95%. So these are players that have been picked up on draft day, generally well liked and held, have good stock in them, whether that's just through historical performances or just because of their name. They are generally well owned, but let's see whether or not these are actually worth hanging on to. So the first one is Cody Gakpo. He's got 4 starts in a row now. There's been a very useful addition while Jota has been out, but I don't think he gets into Liverpool's strongest first 11 at the moment, and we'll see probably Luis Diaz continuing to start on the left side with Diogo Jota up top. It's going to be a frustrating time either way, though, because there's going to be rotation. There's going to be games where he does start. There's also every possibility Diogo Jota gets injured again next week and he's back in. But if it were me, he's someone I'd be looking to move on and just put that headache onto somebody else. Next is Eberechi Eze. Now, not sure you can really call it selling high with just 3 attacking returns all season, but I would be concerned about how Eze fits into the attacking structure that Glasner's system is displaying at the moment. Whenever Palace win the ball, they're looking to ping it into his feet around midfield as quickly as they can so that he can then hold and pop it off to a teammate and spark the counter-attack. It means he's often left behind when the attack kicks off. So it's him getting it into feet. It's then going to Mitchell, to Munoz, to Ismail Assar, and he's kind of left behind once that attack kind of kicks off. So he's more likely to be the guy who assists the assist than actually gets a goal involvement himself, which obviously for draft and FPL in general is of no value to us. It's why I think we're seeing some good output from the likes of Mitchell, Munoz and Ismail Assar, because they are the ones who are more likely going to get on the end of moves or be the final creator in that system. So yeah, obviously still some good stock in his name. We've seen what he can do before over periods. And this is not to say he's not going to come up with returns, because he will, but I would just look and see who you could trade him for in his stead. Next is Rashford. Again, not sure you can call this selling high at the moment, but he would be a firm get rid this week for me, either by trade or possibly through the waivers, especially those of you in leagues with 8 or fewer teams. Rashford would have very little value for me at the moment. In 10-team leagues and beyond, I would be shopping him around in trades with a view to potentially throwing him in the waiver pile if there was a decent replacement. He's just another headache I would much rather another manager took on than keeping it in my own draft team. And as I always say, there are usually no shortage of United fans in any given draft league who would happily take him off you. So just see what you could get in return. But yeah, not a good moment for Rashford. Completely left out of the squad for the City game. The players that came in his place all performing very well. So yeah, he's going to have to do a lot to get back into that starting 11. Next is Dejan Kulusevski, who's got 2 goals in 2 game weeks now. So really the perfect time to sell high. His name has value too because of the plaudits he's been receiving for his performances this season. But I think he's being overvalued as a draft asset because of that. Again, similar to Eze, more likely to be the one assisting the assists. And out of all the players currently around the penalty area, he's not the one that seems to be getting the clear-cut chances at the moment. And again, I would just see who you might be able to get. He's not the worst one to hold on to because we know he's going to start week in, week out. So he's got that at least to keep the points ticking over. But yeah, certainly one I would float around and see if anyone's willing to offer you a bit more upside. And then the final one, who I've alluded to already when talking about other Forest players, is Chris Wood. He is far outperforming his expected goals so far. And I just still maintain isn't technically good enough to sustain that all season. So he's another one I'd be looking to move on now. You've got 10 goals out of him. If you've had him since draft day, you've got 10 goals out of him. It's about the best scenario you could have possibly dreamed of for Chris Wood after 16 game weeks. See who you can get now with a view to carrying on some strong form towards the rest of the season. So on the flip side, if maybe you do have some of those players, who could you look, or even if you don't, who could you look to pick up whose stock may be lower at the moment, who could end up doing very well? The first one is Anthony Gordon for Newcastle. Again, a firm Draft FC favourite. Good stock on draft day, was generally a second round pick for most leagues out there. And I think if Newcastle are going to improve in the second half of the season, it can't be Isak carrying the whole team on his back. We're going to need to see a bit more from the talisman man we saw last year in Gordon. And given the preseason expectations we would have had for him, he is far below that level. He's far, far below where we would have expected him to be come game week 16, 17 at the moment. So those who do have him very much could be open to a deal. Next is Solanke. Now, especially for those playing in head-to-head leagues, he's only had one big game week, which is in game week 10, where he got 3 returns against Villa. Otherwise, he tends to be quite a steady Eddie. 1 return a game, kind of spreads the points out nicely. We've seen lots being made of his deep positioning in hold-up play, but those passing touch charts don't tell the whole story and kind of skew the truth a little bit, because Spurs tend to have so much of the ball. The few touches that Solanke does have will be quite deep. But he's laying that ball off and he's then getting in the box. So he's not just hanging around the heart. You know, when you see his average touch position being somewhere around the centre spot, that isn't actually his average physical position on the pitch. That is just where he's getting a larger than average number of touches, which is, you know, we see that with lots of strikers. So because of the amount of possession that Spurs have, play does then shift up the pitch, and he is in the box to get on the end of chances and also create. If we look at him though as why he could be buy low, he's lagging behind his XG overall. He's continuing to demonstrate the durability we saw from him at Bournemouth last season. He barely picks up injuries. He's missed maybe 1 or 2 games with illness and a knock. And I'm confident that he can end up with more than double the 9 FPL attacking returns that he has to his name so far come game week 38. I think I said in pre-season, be looking for around 19. Can't remember if I said 19 goals or 19 attacking involvements, but either way, if it's 19 attacking involvements, I can't remember, I'd have to look back at what I said now, I would still very much back him to get that. So if somebody was getting a little bit more frustrated with him, definitely someone, you know, if you've got Chris Wood there and Eze, and you could somehow offer that up for Solanke and Gordon. Now, I'm not saying that's a fair deal, but that's the kind of thing where I would bite your hand off for that, you know, especially if someone's really rating Chris Wood and expects that form to continue. If, like me, you're dubious about it, that could be a great deal to put together. just as an example, I say it's difficult to put together scenarios like that because every league is completely different. So, the chances that a manager owns Chris Wood and another one of those players on the sell high list are very low. But it's just an example off the top of my head. The final one there, and this was one of the first names that sprang to mind when deciding to do this segment this week. Now, I said it almost tongue-in-cheek last week that with Watkins potentially being injured, it's as guaranteed a goal as you're likely going to get in the shape of Duran. And sure enough, he scored again against Forest. Now, it came out of nothing. We've seen Watkins start every Premier League game up to game week 14, while also starting the majority of the Champions League games in between as well. That is simply not sustainable. And I wonder if they do try to work the two of them on the pitch at the same time at some point, especially given the lack of support they're getting from the likes of Bailey or Jadon Philogene. I'd almost love to see a midfield diamond with sort of the two of them up top in real true Sven-Göran Eriksson fashion. Rodgers at the top of that diamond, McGinn and Tielemans behind, and Kamara sitting deeper. You got Dean and Cash to provide a bit of width in a real old-fashioned fullback style. Could be interesting. That aside, though, simply playing Duran a bit more in the league when Villa have more important cup games in midweek, I think should become more commonplace. It should be, because they need to protect Watkins. I think the slight dip in output we've seen from Watkins this season has to be partly because of fatigue. He has looked knackered at times, and Duran just remains a player I'd love to own. I don't have him in any of my draft teams, but would certainly be very much open to trying to ply him away from a fellow manager, even though he is not a guaranteed week in, week out starter. Now, the big omission from this list on the buy low list, and someone you'd think would just naturally fall onto the table here, is Phil Foden, and that is a completely conscious choice. I'm just not sure that he's even worth buying low enough at the moment. I mean, he just looks way off it. Man City look way off it. It's not personal to him necessarily, and I haven't seen anything at the moment to suggest things are going to change. Hence why he's not on the list, because I think if you did buy him low, I mean, obviously, look, everyone has their value. So if someone was trading you absolute waiver fodder for him, then I would certainly do it. But you're not, because whoever has held him this long still has the value of a high first round draft pick tied up in him. So they will be looking for some sort of compensation. And I'm just not sure if I was on the other end of that deal, I would be willing to offer a good enough player that would make the deal happen. So it simply makes it very, very difficult to trade him away. I've seen a few 1-for-1 trade options. I think someone in the Draft FC Discord was mentioning a direct swap with Luis Diaz. Not a deal I would make. Luis Diaz has been ticking along very well this season. Just not enough in that for me. I would want a little bit more of a sweetener to take on the headache that is Phil Foden and a big Manchester City asset when they're playing so poorly. Don't get me wrong, he could turn things around. He could have a very Foden level second half of the season, talking last year's Foden level, and get you over 100 points between now and game 38. But current form is suggesting that isn't going to happen. Now, because I'm doing this so early in the week, it's only Monday, I'm not going to do predicted lineups chat, because as I said, there are all of those EFL quarterfinals to go. Lots of press conferences and injury news to come out this week. So just keep an eye on the lineups. I have already done some Game Week 17 predicted lineups, just moving in and out some of the suspensions that we had and that we do have for the upcoming week. But yeah, they will continue to change. So just keep an eye on them, and I'll fiddle with those right up until the deadline. So that's it for this episode. Another reminder, the waiver deadline will be on Friday, the 20th of December at 11 a.m. at the usual time, with the game week deadline 24 hours later at 11 a.m. on Saturday. So plenty of time, if you're watching this early in the week, to get some waivers penciled in. Never hurts to get some penciled in early, because, life happens, it's Christmas, and you could easily let a waiver deadline come and go and let it slip your mind. So don't let that happen. Pencil a few moves in now if you need to make them, and then at least you've got something there if all goes wrong later in the week. If you like these episodes, if you like what we do and you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up to help get the pod out there to more eyes and ears. If you're listening on the audio, again, do the same on whichever podcast platform you're listening to. Give us a follow so you get notified whenever a new episode drops. For those on social media and those that are still lingering around on X, give us a follow on there at draft_FC. We haven't made the move, and I've got no plans to make the move to Blue Sky at the moment because so many avenues to try and keep track of, including Reddit as well. So I'm just staying on there for the time being. For those of you that do like to chat and like to ask questions and want to be involved in the Draft FC Discord community, then you can do. You have to be a signed up member. We're trying to keep it a little bit VIP for now. If you're not a signed up member though, then you can sign up for free using that code DFC324. If you sign up using the free discount code, you will have just as much access to everyone else to the Discord channel. And the join link is in the side menu once you're in the members area. So check that out if you want to get in there too. So, going to leave things there for now. Best of luck for your upcoming matchups in Game Week 17. Don't forget the waivers. Hope you get the players you want. Maybe make some trade negotiations or kick off some negotiations this week because lots of managers will be looking to make some changes to see who you can get off your league rivals. And as always, stay sure.